Very soon you wouldn't be able to call your friends or watch my YouTube videos without going bankrupt, because just 10 years ago India had more than 10 telecom operators, and now we're down to a situation where two companies control 75% of the market, quietly making sure that the internet goes from a basic human right to an unaffordable luxury. Today we break down how we got here, what the government is doing to intervene, and the way ahead. As always, with the help of data and evidence. Let's get started. Look at this crazy irony. Over the last 10 years, the internet became widely accessible to Indians. Mobile data dropped 95% in price since 2014. But despite that, most telecom companies that operated in this country shut down. And consumers have started complaining that they aren't able to afford their mobile services. Something doesn't add up. The thing is, the internet became accessible to Indians, but it didn't remain that way for long. Since 2017, our mobile data prices have doubled and they're set to rise another 50% over the next 5 years. Basically, we don't have competition in the entire sector. Just two companies control 75% of the entire market. So naturally, the government was a little concerned. The government noticed that the companies weren't offering their customers a fair choice. They were selling them a bundled plan with internet, voice, and SMS for a combined price. For instance, the largest telecom operator in India, Jio, would sell a 3-month plan with 100 text messages, unlimited calls, and 6 gigabytes of data for 479 rupees. Now, the government thought this was a bit unfair, especially to the people who didn't have smartphones, older folks who wouldn't use the internet all that much. So the government gave these companies a directive to unbundle their plans, basically telling them that there's these people who just use their phones for calling, so you might as well offer them a cheaper plan and not burn a hole in their pocket, because there's not much competition in this sector and they don't have anywhere else to go. So now Jio quickly complied with this guideline and introduced a new 3-month voice-only plan for 458 rupees, a whopping discount of 21 rupees, essentially keeping the price for a voice-only plan and the data plan the exact same and forcing the customer to pay more. Now you might wonder, isn't it in the best interest for the companies to sell a cheaper voice-only plan because there is a market for that? Well, there is, and for the longest time the companies actually sold a cheaper voice-only plan, but they had to stop for two reasons. The answer lies in this court ruling and an event from 2016. Let's go back in time. In 2016, the cheapest thing you could buy was a voice-only plan. In fact, at the time, if I wanted to text the cute girls in my classroom on Snapchat, I would have to pay 298 rupees for just 1 GB of 3G data. And then something crazy happened. India's largest conglomerate company, Reliance Industries, launched Jio. Armed with $20 billion, they set up all the infrastructure needed for 4G data from scratch and wiped out the entire competition in a price war. All of this money was spent to slash prices. I was now able to buy 1 GB of 4G data instead of 3G for just 12 rupees. Smaller companies like Airtel, Reliance Communications went bankrupt overnight. Slightly larger firms had to merge with their competitors in order to survive. The result was a fractured telecom market where just 3 private players survived, with one of them on life support in the hospital. All of them managed to find a business model where they bundled up voice, SMS, and the internet and sold it at a reduced price for, say, 150 to 200 rupees a month. Now this doesn't sound too bad, right? The consumer seems to be winning. Internet is finally cheap in India. But what you didn't realize at the time was that this entire situation created an oligopoly. A situation where a handful of firms have absolute control over the price of a product. Airtel and Jio, the two companies that controlled 75% of the market, could now jack up the prices if they felt like it. And that's exactly what they did. But wait, it's not that easy. Firstly, this sounds too close to a monopoly, and the government could intervene and break up such a concentration of power. Like many other parts of the world, India also has antitrust legislation, meaning the government plays an active role in making sure that monopolies aren't being formed. And secondly, a new competitor could always enter this market and take away market share from the existing dominant players, right? But here's the craziest thing. The government didn't do any of that. In fact, they made the monopoly stronger, and this court ruling from 2019 proves it. Now, before I break this down, if you learned something new and valuable up until this point, please consider subscribing to the channel, as that's what keeps us incredibly motivated. When Jio entered the telecom market and started slashing prices, all the other telecom operators were cash strapped. And when this happened, they were dealt another blow. This time not by Jio, but by the Indian government. In India, the taxation for a telecom company is very different from that of an ordinary company. For instance, an ordinary corporation would pay a flat 25% corporate profits tax and call it a day. But telecom companies have to pay something called adjusted gross revenue dues. Basically, this is like a subscription fee for the telecom operator's license, for the spectrum fees. This can be anywhere between 11 and 13% of the company's revenues. Keep in mind, revenues, not profits, and this amount is charged over and above the 25% corporate profits tax that they also have to pay like every other corporation. Now, it doesn't take much to realize that this is straight up exploitation, but the telecom operators were still okay with this. They told the government that, you know what, we'll pay you a percentage of our telecom revenue because we've taken the telecom license from you. Meaning, the money that a telecom company makes from selling things like mobile data, text messaging services, calling services, they would be liable to pay 11 to 13% of this revenue to the government. But the government said, no, we want 11 to 13% of all your revenues. So let's say a telecom company owned some land and rented it out to someone else, the government would claim a percentage of this rent as well. If the telecom company had a fixed deposit with a bank, the government would claim 11 to 13% of this fixed deposit as well. And keep in mind, the government would claim 25% corporate profits tax after claiming the AGR dues. The company said absolutely not and sued the Indian government. They challenged this in the court and told the government that if we have taken a telecom license for you, why should we give you anything other than telecom revenues, which makes perfect sense. But the Supreme Court went on record with its judgment and called the companies misconceived. They told the companies, nothing doing, you would pay 11 to 13% of all your revenues to the Indian government. The court also said that now that you've wasted so much of the government's time, you would also pay a penalty and interest for all these years on the unpaid AGR dues. As a result, Vodafone Idea now owes 83,000 crore in these dues, which is almost equal to its entire valuation. Airtel owes north of 50,000 crores, nearly 5 times its annual net profit, effectively rendering both these companies significantly weaker when it comes to competing against the heavyweight Jio. And I'd like to point out an irony here. Both these companies owe about $20 billion to the Indian government, the exact same amount that Jio used back in 2016 to bleed them dry. Double whammy. And as for why wouldn't a new player enter this market, think about it. With such a regressive tax system, why would they want to? Starting a telecom company in any country is very capital intensive. It takes a lot of money, nearly $15 to $20 billion to set up the entire infrastructure and buy the licenses. Now, why would someone want to spend all that money given this economic environment? India is the only country in the world where AGR dues are charged even on non-core income. Plus, economically speaking, it's still not worth it. Even for a large company with cash like Jio, they had to branch out into other businesses at the end. The telecom sector in India isn't attractive to invest in, and there is data to prove this as well. A consulting company reported that the cost of capital in this industry in India is about 14%, meaning an investor needs to earn a minimum return of 14% to make it worthwhile if they want to buy up or start a telecom company in India. However, the actual return on capital for this industry was just 4%. So we're left with the situation where a company came, disrupted the market, made data very affordable for everyone, but as soon as they gained control over the market, they started raising the prices, leading to a U-shaped curve when it came to affordability. And the worst part is that the 3 surviving private companies are together now. In 2024, they raised their prices unanimously 25%. Between 2020 and 2025, their average revenue per user doubled. This isn't what competition is supposed to look like. And even today, the government isn't willing to reduce the barrier to entry in this industry and increase the competition. For instance, in 2021, Elon Musk's Starlink tried to enter the Indian market. Starlink's internet doesn't come from cellular towers like Jio and Airtel. They do it with the help of satellites, for which they would need to purchase satellite rights from the Indian government. When Musk tried to do this, the Indian telecom lobby tried convincing the government to hold an auction so that they could come together and jack up the prices for these satellite rights. Or better yet, just have those rights for themselves. However, luckily, the government ruled in favor of Elon Musk partially. They said that no, we won't hold an auction for satellite rights, but we'll decide who gets the rights. Finally, in 2024, Starlink was forced to announce a partnership with Airtel and Jio, leading to zero damage to the monopoly. Now, there are three potential solutions to fix this. The first is to end the AGR problem once and for all. And this is not by de-recognizing the non-core revenue, but by abolishing the entire AGR system and switching to a flat fee structure. Instead of claiming 11 to 13% of the company's revenue over and above a 25% corporate profits tax and 18% GST, the government could simply switch to a flat fee model that would make operating in this sector way easier and worthwhile. This could drastically reduce the cost of capital and make investment in this sector more attractive again. Secondly, the government could also reduce the licensing fees. Now, internet in India is the cheapest, but the licenses are some of the most expensive in the entire world. So let's say there's less revenue coming in from a potential business. Why would someone pay exorbitant fees to set up that business here when they could just set it up somewhere else? A more sustainable solution for this could be a usage-based fee like there is in the United States and the European Union, wherein the initial cost is very low and the company pays as per the usage for the spectrum, and they also have options to pay it in installments so that the financial burden is lower. And the third solution is to simply increase competition by encouraging foreign telecom operators to enter India by offering them tax holidays and lighter regulations for operating in remote regions. Anyway, if you stuck around up until this point, I'd love to know what you think could be a solution for this problem. Let me know in the comments, and if you learned something new from this video, please consider subscribing to the channel, as that's what keeps us incredibly motivated.